Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Whether you're joining us from Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or even listening to us on our website, I'm really glad that you've joined. Today, we're going to get into how to build a site that keeps pace with customers' needs. Now, the last podcast episode was a recap from a multi-part web event that I took part in. It was called OnTap. There's a link in the show notes. It's a regular event put on by a premier web design agency. And these guys have helped me appreciate that there are websites and then there are websites. Things like some websites will give user experience short shrift, slapping together generic templates that look pretty generic. Others use experts to make interfaces that are optimized for mobile and PC environments and anticipate what users want, present that content exactly the right way to engage them. Some don't have much security. They are susceptible to cyber threats, while other sites invest heavily in it and protect not only themselves, but their visitors. Some sites cling to technology that's become atrophied and prone to crashing. Others are kept up to date and are upgradable as the company's needs change. They have backends, of course, and those backends can either crater when traffic spikes or keep on humming because they're scalable. Some will leave it to visitors to come back on their own initiative, and others will have clever email devices that smartly coax visitors back. Our guest is going to show us how to see the difference that well-developed websites can make. And he knows how the value of these online presences can be unlocked to produce experiences that lead to revenue. He is the co-founder and the CEO of that full-service web development agency I talked about. He grew up and started his studies in Montreal and then went on to study at New York's Yeshiva University. Then he spent time in the food service industry and stints in e-commerce before starting a game development studio. And then he and a business partner teamed up and switched it into a web dev company called Arctic Leaf. He's gone beyond this and started other ventures too. The drive to do all this, he'll tell you, is probably rooted in ADHD or being a natural entrepreneur or his own chutzpah. Probably all of these. But after knowing him for over a decade, for questions about what to do with a website, I know he is the person to talk to. And I hope that you'll stick around and listen to this talk with Josh Garellek. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Hello, let me see your name, Josh.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, Glenn, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Like I said, it is actually 10 years in the making. So very cool, very exciting, an opportunity to connect with you. Someone who I've looked up to for a long time in the Ottawa community and as a serial entrepreneur. Feel pretty grateful to be able to opportunity to kind of just chat with you and talk shop and kind of share some insights.
Very cool. Yeah. And so we're going to rapidly move past that. Otherwise, I'm just going to be blushing the whole time. Yes, it's good just to let listeners know we know each other. So, you're going to hear some yakety yak stuff, I'm sure. Right. But what we're going to talk about here is something you know extremely well, which is websites, the development, design, and execution of websites. And I'll say it for you, but you are the head of a major website developer, particularly highly known in the e-commerce space. So you are entrusted with major brands to be able to deliver a site that actually drives revenue. Let me just start by kind of teeing it up by talking about a website in general, I want us to make it very clear to people that you do not see a website as something that somebody in a basement hacks together because they got a domain name, and now they have to put something up there to match the domain name, and it's going to stay that way for as long as they have that domain name. You don't see a website like that at all. So how do you see a website? What do you think of in terms of how does it change over time, and what does it consist of?
Well, first things first is evolution, right? It's like anything else. Whether if you're standing still, you're not growing, you're not evolving, you're not building, you're not pushing the boundaries, and you're not listening to your customers, right? You're not hearing what your customer base is telling you about what they want or what they want to see. We still see a lot of companies that have built stores or built websites back 15, 20 years ago on Yahoo, and they actually come to us and say, hey, we want to migrate and do something with it. Oh yeah, that still exists, by the way. It really does. Yeah, it's.
I mean, I've seen some Dreamweaver sites, and I've seen even a few with flat HTML.
Yeah, but the Yahoo stores are special ones, that's for sure. we don't see it that often, but when we do, it's like, ooh, it's like goodness. A unicorn, right? So when you see them, right? No, the way we look at e-commerce stores, and just for clarity, like we obviously build websites, but like what we build is high traffic conversion websites, right? Specifically around e-commerce, things like that. When we look at an e-commerce store or website, we're looking at how is a customer interacting with your brand, right? That's really what it boils down to, right? How are they getting to your site? How are they interacting with it? Are they converting? Are they going through the journey flow that has been created? So we look at all of those aspects, and we look at the aesthetics. We look at the understanding of the brand, the voice, the speak, the content. Everything has a piece. Everything that's important. We briefly talked about kind of this 3-pillar approach, or I've talked about this many times over my career, where you have pillar 1 is lead generation. I'm going to leave all that to Glenn because he's the expert in that. I know nothing. No, I know a little bit, but Glenn is definitely the expert. Then you have, in my opinion, you have user experience, which is the front end of your store, and then or what a customer lands on, and then you have bottom funnel, which is quote unquote retention marketing. So we really focus, or I focus more on the user experience and the aesthetics when someone lands on a store, and then all the way down through the bottom of the funnel. And especially today, day and age, like our attention span is what I think more or less in a second, right? So those stores have to be captivating enough. They have to have the information that's readily available for those individuals who are looking for that product or service, easily accessible, and be able to understand where you're going. So for us, it's your brand, right? It's your brand Bible. It's when someone lands there, it's like, what do you want them to see about your company, about what you're selling? It is never stagnant, right? It's kind of like me. I never sit still. I can't stop sitting still. So it's to me, it's evolution, right? Everything you have to evolve, everything you have to grow, and you have to tweak, test, and even when you think you've done tweaking and testing, you got to tweak and test even more.
Yeah, never done.
So, never done.
There are some massive
like
challenges.
This great body I got going on here.
Yeah. So there's some big challenges in what you just said. If I just think of a homepage, it has to be able to suit people at different points in the customer journey, people who are in different segments. There's a lot to be done. And like you say, if we pull back the hood, there are different pieces underneath. So that notion of evolving, it sounds like we just have to get into the rhythm of swapping out components underneath as we grow, that we're never going to say, all right, I've got the stack that I'm going to, stick with forever. There are always times where you've got to look and see, okay, what's the next thing that's getting old and that we've got to replace?
Like if I think about just my own company's website, Arctic Leaf, right? Like we're constantly making updates to it, probably every day, right? Whether it's content, images, new service offerings that we're thinking through. Right now, we're modifying the entire navigation system and taxonomy and how a potential customer who would land on our site would go through the journey. We know who our ICP is, we know who our ideal customer profile is, but with where the market's at, we've actually been putting in these kind of express packages and other things like that we have. And it's interesting when you start to play with your overall offering and start offering some other types of services in a more smaller capacity. You have to think through that. Like it's you can't just kind of throw it up and it's good to go. It's something that like us internally, we even go through this whole process of our stories and like what is the user story? How is someone going through that journey, right? What is the expected outcome that you're looking for? Right? Is it lead gen? Is it form fills? Is it at the end of the day, you want to talk to a potential prospect. That's the objective, right? Or you want to convert a customer or you want to convert a prospect into a customer. Or you want to capture their information so you can nurture them to become a customer, right? So there's a lot of things going on there. A lot we can unpack.
I appreciate how you're placing emphasis on the user. When I hear people talk about what they're putting on page, and I'm not saying it doesn't need to be there, but they usually gallop towards SEO or the landing page experience for a paid ad scenario. These come into play. Yes, the search engines and the quality score rankings do matter. But as you say, there's a user here. Never forget that. And we need to put them at the top of the pile.
Yeah. I think the idea people do, like you said, they get really in the weeds on SEO, right? Especially when they're a new company or a new brand that's coming out. It's like, okay, how do I improve my SEO? I'm like, I mean, yes, you have some key items and things that you need to do when you first go live so that the Google can crawl you and all of that stuff. But in my opinion, that's secondary, right? You got to get your offering dialed. You know who your ICP is. You need to make sure that everything's functioning correctly, right? And then as you get that dialed in, then you can start working on content strategies and other things to help drive more awareness. But that's secondary, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know, I may get yelled at by someone from our listeners, but
well, I don't think so. And look, the results don't lie. So, if you do live and die by what that e-commerce site is doing, you have to pay attention to how the users are responding with their body language, so to speak, by are they sticking around and are they buying? A little bit more on user experience. So it's something that I'm sure folks listening who are from large companies will say, yeah, it's really important. We have a lot going on with it. We do experimentation, et cetera, et cetera. But moving down to the smaller ones, if we just try to unpack what user experience means, or if you had to explain it to one of your kids, how do you boil it down?
I think the easiest way to boil it down is everyone shops or everyone interacts with a website or a store differently. And it's being able to understand that each of these personas have a different way that they shop and understand how they move through a journey. And some examples is some people are searchers, right? They land on a store or a website, and the first thing they do is they go to the search bar and they type in what they want to find, right? They don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
You have their attention for 1 to 2 seconds. That search result better come up with a good response, right? Then you have the browsers, right? You have the individuals that like to get on a site. They like to scroll down. They like to press all the buttons. They like to go here. They like to go there, right? So user experience is how does someone go through your buying experience with the least amount of friction as possible, right? Can you do something instead of it being 3 clicks of a mouse? Can you do it in 2 clicks of a mouse, right? Simplest, easiest way to boil it down.
Yeah.
Can I do something that would take 3 or 4 clicks in 2 to 3 clicks? And I know it's like so simple when you hear that, but when you actually distill it down and think through how this is all going to operate, it's actually a lot more complicated, right? And then you have to think through, am I actually hitting the business logic that I'm looking for, right? Like you have to think through the outcome that you're wanting your customers to experience or that through that journey. So that's the easiest way. It's like, how do I get someone from point A to point B with the least amount of friction as possible?
Right. And I mean, we have a lot that we can do, but let's also remember it's not a totally blank canvas. Depending on which technology platform we're on and which providers we have who are developing on that, there are certain things that'll come easy, certain things that'll be highly custom and come hard.
Yep.
So we gotta think of that, or even not just baked into the platform, but like above that, like regionalized settings or settings for existing customers versus brand new strangers. There are decisions that have already been made that will constrain just how much we can do to reduce those clicks or scrolls. But still, there are things we can do. A simple one I often notice is how do you message them when they've done something that you didn't expect? Do you give them a really scary 404, or do you say, I think what you were trying to do was this. Go here.
Yeah. So 404s is a big one, right? 404s in theory are technically bad, right? Like you should, in theory, not have 404s, but if you have search result pages that don't end up with something, there should be some kind of related product, or other customers bought this if they did this search and things like that. If you do have 404s, you can have a lot of fun with it. You can do lots of product information on there, details, upsells, other related items, things like that. And then, getting into the user experience side in e-commerce, there's an entire segment of what we call personalization. There's companies out there that they sell apps, and all they do is personalization. It's called merchandising and personalization. And they use AI to fill in the gaps, and they use past buying experiences and historical data and lifetime customer value, and they look at network effects, and they take all this stuff and they group it and they put you in this category. And based on your past buying experiences, and it's almost like a lookalike audience in your world, right?
Yep.
And what we're actually finding is that our e-commerce platforms can actually give you lookalike audiences to go and put into Google and other things down the road. But really, like there's so much around even just personalization. Like I said, it's just understanding who that customer is, what their buying tendencies are, not like understanding their spend thresholds. Like you can get that granular on this type with these types of solutions and platforms. Now, for someone who's just starting out, no, you probably don't need to get into the weeds on that stuff. When I talk about the 3 pillars, each pillar, while I say user experience and buying journey, like there's segments within that user experience, like user generated content, reviews, personalization, merchandising, search, upsells. You have social impact shopping things where if you buy this, we'll donate money to a certain charity. Like there's so much in there, right? And you don't even need to get to that. I mean, there's so much low-hanging fruit that you can work on first. Like just making sure like product images are of high quality. I know it sounds like the most ridiculous thing in the world, but I can tell you how many clients we work with that when we get the product images, they're just not in great quality. And we have to do a bunch of work to put in renders and 3Ds and all that kind of stuff. And it actually makes a very big difference when you can see the details of a product versus something that looks pixelated. So very easy, simple, low-hanging fruit. Another easy one from a user experience that we've seen a lot with is social impact, right? Social impact is how are customers interacting with your brand and product on social media. So now there's tools where you can actually pull in your user-generated content and put it right on your homepage so that when the user is scrolling, so we talked about that scroller, as they're scrolling through the page, they all of a sudden, they don't just see what the brand is enforcing, They actually see what customers are saying about the brand and how they're interacting with them. And if we all know this, people are more inclined to buy something from someone that they've referred to or been referred to, or see that they're, you get FOMO. People get FOMO, right? It's like,
Social graphs work. Yeah,
exactly right. So, there's definitely a lot there that we can continue down on. But yeah, there's so many low hanging fruits that can be dealt with just on the user experience side, and personalization, UGC reviews, like upsells. It's endless. Like, where do you want to keep going with this, Glenn?
It's cool. Well, I mean, we get so far that I feel sometimes a person who's in marketing might listen to this and feel like it's like a big helium balloon that, they're having difficulty holding on to, and it's about to, come out of their hands. And yet there is a bedrock that comes down to it here. And I think that because you work with other brands that have bricks and mortar locations, one of the things that you can always kind of use as a touchstone is, what is the sales experience like? Because I know we're working on a web platform and there's tons of technology here, but when it comes right down to it, well, I'll use the words of a guy named Carl Blanks. And he said, if you can't sell your products in person, you're going to struggle to sell them online. Like, so,
Yeah.
The best website in the world will not fix bad product or a bad sales process for a product.
I love that you brought up retail, because it's interesting, because exactly what you just said. If you can't sell your product in person, how are you going to sell online? But what's interesting is that people forget that an in-person retail shoppings is still dealing with user experience. It's just a different type of user experience.
Of course. Yeah.
But so one of our staff members here at the company actually worked for Versace for 5-6 years and was a merchandiser for Versace. Their store never stayed the same more than 3 to 4 months, ever. They're constantly updating layouts, positioning, product placement, the mannequins, the type of mannequins. So if you take that for a second and you just distill it down, and it's like, okay, if they're doing that in retail, right? Because they want to keep things fresh, why would you not do that in an e-commerce or web component? It's the same thing. And when when these brands are doing these in-store layouts, like, they're not cheap, right? But they know they need to do it. And it's the same kind of concept of online, is like, you have to be constantly updating your assets, even if it's just fresh assets every 2 weeks, right? Something a little different, lifestyle photography versus just product photography. Some of our brands do that. They'll literally, like, this month we're going to test lifestyle product photography. So instead of it just being a simple product, it'll actually be like an individual with a group of friends interacting and whatever. And we'll actually A/B test which converts better. And I'll give you the option to take a guess as to what do you think converts better, Glenn?
Probably the one with people.
Yes, exactly. So what a concept, right? Interesting, seeing people smiling, laughing, having a good time, and oh, there's your product right there, right? So it's just like, again, like it's like a retail, right? If you're in a retail location, you're constantly updating, you're tweaking, you're modifying. It's the same thing on web. It's tweaking, modifying, testing, playing, and it's never the same, right? Growing from 0 to 1 million is one challenge, and then 1 million to 10 million is a different challenge, and then 10 million up is even a totally different beast in general. And you're never going to do things different. You're never going to do things the same along the way, right?
Right. So actually, I'm so glad you brought that up. So if we kind of think about going from small to big, when it comes to user experience and things like experiments, there does seem to be this rule of thumb that, any experiment, you need a certain amount of data before you can say, did that work? And because it costs money to run the experiment, to find the data, that has to be justifiable. So somewhere, if you can tell me by revenue or some other thing, where we start to see it crossing over and being worth it to even run experiments on that, proverbial back corner of the store
Yeah.
where we're just making a tweak, like you said.
It's hard to quantify like a revenue number, but I'll give you an example of a merchant that we work with.
Okay.
When they first came to us a number of years ago, we took them on as doing their bottom of funnel retention marketing, email, SMS, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they were consumable products. And one of the things that when I first looked at the account, I was like, why don't you have what's called a replenishment flow? So basically, if you buy a product and it has 30 days worth of supply, at day 26, send an email saying, "Hey, you're probably running low. You want to order now, or sign up for auto ship or subscription or something like that."
Yep.
Right? That one add-on flow literally has paid for our services for years to come.
Wow.
They generate so much money from that one added flow because it just now there's 3 emails deep on that, but day 26 they get a reminder, day 28 they get another reminder, and then day 29 they get another reminder, and usually some kind of like 5% off or discount or whatever it is. And holy moly, that thing works really well.
Right. So there's proof positive that a small tweak can make a difference. I suppose their sales are in the millions per year.
Yes,
to make that much of a
they're several $1 million a year brand online, and they also have retail operations and other things like that. So
sure.
So that was a really good test. I mean, they've grown quite a bit in that category. We do have other brands where a good example. It's usually, I would say, of above about that 7-figure threshold is really when you start getting interesting and you start seeing impact. Imagine you're on an antiquated platform like Yahoo, like we talked about before, right? And you're it's a special breed. I don't understand. It's still there. Yahoo's e-commerce still exists somehow, some way. But imagine you're on Yahoo and you decide you're going to move to Shopify, right?
Sure.
And your page load speed is 10 seconds on Yahoo, right? I'm not kidding. We just migrated a brand that was 10 to 13 seconds on initial payload, and now they're at 3 to 4. So imagine if you hit a store and you take 10 seconds to load the homepage. Click, you're gone, right? I'm out. Forget it.
Yeah. Or I walk into a physical store and I'm standing in front of somebody and I say, "Hi, let me tell you what I'm here to look for."
Or if you're like me, you flip the table, right? So, so imagine you go from Yahoo to Shopify and you go from a 10-second page load to a 2-second page load, right? What do you think that's going to have an impact on your conversion?
It's a global impact.
Drastic?
No, it should be drastic.
Massive. And that's just a platform migration, right?
Right.
But it's something as simple as that, but that can massively change your conversion rate, right? You can go from a 1 to 2% simply just because now you can actually shop on the store, and it doesn't take forever, right?
Yeah. So it's that mindset of I need to replace whatever it is that is providing friction or confusing or whatever for my user.
Well, here's a good example. Like, there's tools, products like Hotjar that we install on, I don't know if
session recorders.
Session recorders, right? Where you can actually safely watch your customer base and users interact with your product and store and website. And you can see where the shortfalls are and where they drop off and how they interacted and why they dropped or converted, didn't convert. And while it is a little bit of time consuming because you're actually sitting there watching a user, I know it's a little bit creepy and Big Brother stuff, but it's really fascinating to watch people interact with your product, right, or your website, and where the heat map is and where they go and where their eye tracking is. It's unbelievable the technology that can be done there. But think about all that data. That's all data. And you talked about sampled sets, right? Are you going to make a decision based on 5 people doing something or 500 people doing something?
Yeah. Or even the right 5 people, like you said. If someone isn't convinced that there is that browser type persona, because the way that they personally approach a shop online is, they're going in and doing the search. All you've got to do is show them maybe 1 or 2 recordings from that, and argument's over.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's we do that all the time, right? We do a 90-day, what's called a 90-day review after a site goes live, and we benchmark it. We look at their metrics pre-launch to post-launch. We install Hotjar. We do watch the recordings, and then we provide a 90-day document, basically, of how well your store or product has evolved since we initially took it over. And hey, you know what? We just launched a new product. Fantastic. Everything is great. Everything looks flashy and amazing. But here's all the other stuff that we can work on also. Right. So I'm talking about how like it's never done. We literally just launched the new store. 90 days later, we're like, by the way, you should do all of this stuff.
Yeah. And we've got a few more of those that I want to get to, predominantly around that, entire customer lifetime, particularly those who've already purchased before. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Do you have a lot of company data in reach, but struggle to get useful business insights out of it? Do you open up your Google Analytics, but find you're at a loss on how to get it reporting the way you want? Do you wonder what new marketing strategies you could leverage if you could just unlock what's in your data? If you said yes, then you sound just like other clients did when they started working with me. Many B2B companies who I've done project work with have been helped by modernizing their analytics. Some deploy dashboards, some activate their data using machine learning. Let's talk about what you would like your analytics to do for you. Please reach out today via the podcast feedback channels or connect with me, Hey Glenn S, 2 N's on Glenn, on either Twitter or Instagram. Or search up Marketing Analytics People on LinkedIn. Okay, let's get back to the show. Okay, Josh, we're talking about the things that are still, maybe smallish type changes, but they make a massive difference to how much we're making from a customer over their lifetime by what we're doing. I tend to notice that websites fall asleep or they fall down after I've given them my money. Might just be me, but I'm looking for things like, can I print off this page? Does it have a reference number? Can I find out what the deal is with tracking of the physical delivery, or what are the policies that I've just said yes to?
People just click the button. Like
I know, but or I'll get off the website and then I notice there's something in my email, like an autoresponder, but it seems really like it's written for everybody in the world. And this company should know me by now. Maybe I created an account to buy this thing. And like, why is the experience so bad? Or maybe they miss an opportunity to get my feedback. Like I could point out to you guys something that you would be super simple to do, but you didn't ask.
Well, I think you just nailed it. You just hit the nail on the head, right? If you don't ask, you don't receive.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes into personal development. It goes to day-to-day life, right? I mean, I don't know your shopping tendencies, but I'll literally walk into like any store and I'll ask for a discount. Like, can I get 5% off?
And see what they say. Yeah.
And just like, what's the worst thing that happened? No, sorry, sir. Okay, fine. 9 times out of 10, I usually get 5% off. So, right. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Is like, most brands, like they're not asking for that feedback, right? Product-led growth is all based on customer-led feedback, right?
Right.
So, again, if you're not interacting with your customers and asking them questions, you're missing out on a ton of data. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. There's take for example, if you're a fragrance company or a perfume company, a lot of these brands are using what's called a quiz or a wizard, right?
Yep.
So they're actually coming in there and saying, are you, what types of scents do you like? Do you like outdoorsy stuff? Do you like, a little bit more sweet or savory or whatever? And they'll actually, while that's really interesting, what's really happening is the brand is actually just collecting data on you. That's first party data. And then they take that data and they put you into what's called a segment. And now they understand where you fit in that journey, right? Okay, we know certain things, we know if they converted, didn't convert, things like that. But just going back, I mean, half the battle is it's actually just asking or conveying stuff. And going back to why some of these user experiences are pretty poor on the bottom funnel stuff is that people don't think about it, right? They like,
so they don't know you, but they never asked, right? Yeah, and it's a simple. I mean, if I understand,
if you don't have any data, right?
yeah,
It's imagine I put my email address in to a pop-up, right?
yep,
Unless I've interacted with your brand and I understand, like, I've kind of clicked on some emails and other things like that, you don't really know me. So that's why it's like
correct,
a little bit generic. So, and that's why all these companies are doing these quizzes and wizards and all these other things to try to get more data on where they
yeah,
should be fitting these people or these customers into a box. But initially on the onset, yeah, we don't, especially now with all the changes, and you know this better than I do, like with all the changes with iOS 15, 16, 17, and
yeah,
all that stuff, like
privacy, yeah,
privacy and third-party data, like you can't cookie them anymore. Can't get that,
right,
can't get the information anymore. So it's taking the brands a lot more effort to do so, and it's why they're investing in different types of technology around, referral marketing and network effects and understanding, you know, extended customer lifetime value and all that kind of fun stuff.
It's kind of weird that, while tracking was kind of cool and had the appearance of knowing your customer, when you can just come out and ask them, you can actually really know them. They
Yeah.
want to exchange value with you because they understand that you'll turn that into serving them better. The only point I would add to what you would say for folks out there who are saying, oh my goodness, I've got to build a CDP and I have to get all of these pieces of info. If you're artful about it, Josh gave the example of an email address. Build on that. But if you're good with picking the pieces of information that work very well for customers, it only takes a few for you to kind of go up this hockey stick of going from sucking at what you know about them to demonstrating to them that you're good at knowing them. One really dumb example, and it's in a dull industry, is insurance. If an insurance company for me gets a bit of information, but they ask something normal like, when does your existing policy expire? Now they're not going to annoy me by showing up 6 months from when it does. Yeah. If they use a sequence that begins a couple weeks before,
we call that pre-qualifying question.
Right? It's not as hard as people think.
It's not. I wanted to kind of touch on that. You mentioned email address, and I think that while a lot of people, there's been a lot of discussion around email and all that kind of stuff. Is email dead? Right? In my world, no, email is not dead. Like, first of all, I use it every single day. As much as I like Slack, I'm still one of those old school email guys. Yep. I'm never going to get rid of it. Right? It I'm just not. But like in the world of, think of the world of being personalization, right? Being able to communicate and talk to your customers. Where do you have a better chance of doing that? On Meta, Google, Facebook, or email?
Yeah.
Right. And I heard this saying, and I love it, and I keep saying it, is that all these platforms are rented real estate. And something that is not owned revenue is email. Because imagine Meta goes down, right?
Yeah.
Imagine Google goes down. And we did. I think last year Meta was down for a full day. Like, it was crazy. Yep. Like the internet just crashed because like their pixels are all hooked into everything and everything was just dying. Yeah. The people who had email were making a killing that day because they were not on rented real estate, and they were able to segment out and be able to reach out to their customer base and communicate with them. And it's people, like, they all want to, let's invest in SMS and push notifications. We need all these other bells and whistles, but it's like, guys, you have this amazing channel that is completely underutilized right now, massively underutilized. For context, by the way, just for everyone's stats, your email channel should be doing 20 to 24% of your monthly revenue from your e-commerce store.
Huh.
Now, in some sub-segments, obviously that's lower if you have a very high AOV, average order value, or it's, you're buying big machinery or aluminum. And yes, people do buy aluminum in bulk online, which is, remember the bath when everyone ran out of toilet paper.
Yes.
We have a industrial supply company, and they were getting pallet orders of toilet paper to to people's driveways and houses. Like it was crazy. It was crazy, right?
Right. But something like a lowly,
Yeah.
in
So
any
in that case, like,
avenue, any industry you look at, you can find something as simple as email
but
that
that's when
actually
I
drives
say,
it.
when people come to us saying, what can you do for me? The lowest hanging fruit, a lot of the time, is retention marketing.
Yeah.
It's you've done a decent job on the user experience. They're going through your funnel, but then
Yeah.
you're not using those sequences and automation to recapture the engagement. And just something like just setting up 7 standard flows or sequences, like a welcome series. Hey, welcome to my brand. Here's 5% off or whatever, right? And that could be 3 or 4 levels deep, right? Browse abandonment. Hey, we saw you were shopping and looking at the following product. Like basic stuff. You believe how many brands don't even do this, right? So you want to talk low hanging fruit? Super easy. You don't even, and that's at like, and that we see everything from 0 to $50 million online. Like it's all the way.
Right. Don't look down on it. Don't turn your nose up at it. In my own experience, I will have been on a website, let's say for something that I don't often get, and I buy when I need another one. So, for example, contact lenses by mail. That's the one I remember using. Do you think I could remember the name of the website or that it was still in my browser history? Forget it. Where did I go? Email. Because I remembered that they sent me a good confirmation message. I couldn't remember their name, but I could remember, okay, go to email. And that was an alternate means of holding on to me for the however long it took me to come back. And then I did, and it was good.
But
you mentioned replenish.
They may put you into a retargeting.
Right? They could have done that.
So they put a metric in place saying
a win-back campaign.
Win-back campaign, exactly, right? So give me a segment, create me a segment of individuals who have not purchased in the last 180 days that are in this demographic and region.
Yep.
And it just creates the list, and now you go and you target them, right?
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about that too is that, let's say the individuals don't convert, then you can suppress them and realize that they're not an ideal customer base or someone you should be targeting, right?
So well put. I mean, we think about the include, but you can also use the exclude, and both are powerful. We got to talk about how this stuff gets built, Josh, and people usually have a choice for when they're going to be moving through different systems. Like if they do want to do this Yahoo to Shopify upgrade, or,
I hope anyone who's on Yahoo should move to Shopify or any other platform.
Or yes. So
anywhere you go, just go.
Just not Yahoo. So, but these platforms, they're not magic wands. And I know that you're quite familiar with the types like Magento, I think BigCommerce. They all have things that one should know about them, because if you try to do a migration and you don't know them, you're going to get rude surprises.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that and how it might affect management team's choice of, do we just let our inside dev do it, or do we outsource it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So first of all, like you said, all these platforms have nuances. They all have limitations. There's different things that work well. My personal opinion, I still think Shopify works really well for D2C and smaller SKU counts, lower catalog SKU counts, things like that. And someone who wants a little bit more kind of flexibility around CMS and other things like that, right? A lot of the times your internal development team will not know these types of things because they're not used to working in these platforms on a regular basis. And where someone like us, all we do is live inside these platforms. And so when a brand will come to us and say, we usually go through, again, I mentioned the pre-qualifying questions, right? So we go through the pre-qualifying questions, and then based on those responses, we'll actually tailor our approach and saying, hey, well, we have 2 or 3 options we can present to you. Here's option A. Here's the good, the bad, the ugly. And it could work, but here's why we don't think it's the right fit. And here's why we think you should do something else, and why there's benefits to leveraging this platform over another platform. So we're much more in solution selling. We don't just like make shit look pretty on screen, right? It's
Right.
we like to actually get into the weeds of things. And again, our ICP is generally customers that are doing 5 to 10 million online and up, and anywhere between 25 and 50 million offline, right? So they usually have a pretty good idea of what they're looking for, their previous tech stack, the good, the bad, things that have not worked in the past, their pain points. So we capture all this information and we bring it to the table and we present something. But again, someone on the inside, if you're working on Magento or you're working on Yahoo, right? All you know is Magento and Yahoo, right? So why you go to an agency like us or Arctic Leaf would be because I'm looking for external expertise that I may not be able to capture or have in-house, right? Now, maybe down the road, the future development stuff will get pulled back in-house because they have resources and developers.
Right.
And we've been in situations where we do the initial build and then we set up a
hand it
back. And then we usually do like a 3-month consulting project where we have the developers can reach out to us and ask us as many questions as we want. And we just respond back and we help them onboard, right?
Great.
And, down the road, hopefully we get some more business out of them.
Sure.
Obviously, the objective is to try to win more business and recurring revenue and retainers, but not all of them work like that, right? But
so, as far as advice for someone who's looking to outsource, I can commiserate with them. I think, particularly if we think about it at the time when they want to do a migration, when they look at whichever other platform is in their shortlist, that platform's website is going to say, we're tremendous. Our stuff is rock solid and it does it all. Right? They'll all say that.
Everyone says it. Everyone says they're amazing. Everyone says.
So, but from the war stories you've told me, the things that come back to bite you are undocumented or little known flaws in those systems when you're trying to match it. Yeah, but it's all contingent on, you're trying to run this e-commerce platform on that CMS or with this particular follow-on system.
Well, there's trade-offs, right? So I think that's where the conversation gets into the weeds is like, yeah, sure. Could we build on Shopify? Absolutely. Not a problem. However, here are the things that you're going to need to contend with, right? When we migrate you over, it's going to take you a month versus doing it with this platform over 3 days because there potentially is API rate limits, right? Hypothetically, I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying that is a scenario that we can run into. Recent scenario we ran into is very well-known platforms. Like we have unlimited API rate limits, never going to run into a problem. We pushed 94 million order records into this platform in under 10 hours, and we literally took down their API.
Yeah, you brought them to their knees. Yeah.
And they're like, we've never had anyone do something like this before. So we like to try to, push the boundaries a little bit. And
is this one where you said you had an internal developer who like jerry rigged some amazing thing to artfully just put out spurts so that we're just below the rate limit?
It was something special, but we definitely his thesis is, well, you told me I can't do it, but I'm going to verify that I can't do it.
Right. I'm going to go as far as I can.
But we pushed the platform and the API to their brink, and we actually broke it to the point where they completely turned us off, and we had to deal with their internal team, and we had to set up and spin up an entirely separate API and other things, and we had to keep it under a certain request of account and
right. And
so, but again, like to us, when we even as a company as old as ours that has been working on this platform for as long as they have,
right,
we never experienced that.
No, you only know them when you hit them.
And it's like, how do you know that? You're never going to know that unless you actually go about the process and try to do something that.
Yeah. I mean, the next best thing is that you're using a team where there's a high velocity of use cases thrown at the platform. So they do really know where its limits lie.
What's amazing though now is that particular use case has been championed all the way up to their senior management and C-level suite, because now Arctic Leaf basically broke their platform.
Okay. So your picture might be on a dartboard in the boardroom.
No. They're actually really happy. I mean, they're not happy, but
No, but you uncovered
they're
something.
they're like, oh wow, like this has never happened before. Like we should probably evaluate this and think how we can improve it. So
Yeah.
again, you can either look at it as a negative, right? You can either say, wow, those guys, those jerks, why they do that? Or you can say, you know what, wow, look at those guys. They really tried to innovate and they pushed us. So we need to be better.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with your website, right? It's the same thing when someone gets there the first time, the user experience, right? You can either be mad that a customer didn't follow the journey that you created, or you can watch them go through that journey, figure out why they're not converting, and say to myself, you know what? I need to make some tweaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
You can totally flip your mindset. Project management. I know you're a big proponent of it and you put it way up there, no matter if we're talking in-house or outsource, but you say it has to work. How do you gauge that? Or what would you suggest people look for to say, yep, this is a group that knows how to manage the project of keeping a complicated website going and upgrading it?
First things first is I think that, and this was something I learned years ago, is we never actually charged for project management up until about 4 years ago. And that was something I made a change. And I was like, oh my God, are people going to actually pay for project management? And you know what? I can sit here and confidently say that people pay for project management.
Yeah.
Right. And we actually distill that down, and it's a separate line item on our statement of work. And so they can see what they're there and who the contact is. So I think starting is actually understanding the value of project management, and then everyone's eager to get running, right? Everyone wants to like, oh, let's get into the meat of it. Let's start designing. Let's start doing this. Let's all that. But there's so much foundational stuff that has to happen, right? During the solutioning process or sales process, you get a lot, but you don't get it. You can't get into the weeds the way you can when you first onboard a client. Yep. So to me, that project management piece, that first onboarding piece is so crucial. You get to meet your account manager or technical PM, and you get into the weeds, you ask questions, and instead of running into design or development, you actually set the project up, you build a Gantt chart. Gantt charts are massive. This is something we invested in years ago as well. So the technology we use is Teamwork, which is our project management software. Everything has a Gantt chart. So you know orders of operations, path of release resistance, what are movable items, can things start done, can things be worked on earlier or later, what are dependencies. So having a clear idea of your project plan is massively crucial. It's like, again, if you went to a kitchen, if you're redoing a kitchen, are you doing a kitchen without architectural plans? Are you building a house without an architectural diagram?
Right. Or you just go swinging a hammer and see what happens.
But it's crazy that when I tell that to people, they look at me and they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's weird. It's like, why?
I know, but like you say, it's because there's such urgency to get going. One of the things that you told me has stuck is...
I told you a lot of things.
I know, and so much of it just goes out the other ear. But I do listen, Josh.
I agree with you. You shouldn't listen to anything I say.
But the point I'm talking about here is you said to slow down and do that information collection, that discovery. You sometimes will come across clients where you say to them, what's your strategy? Or just narrowing it down, like what's your retention strategy or whatever it is. And they say, I don't know. One thing that project management will save their butt on, because in the right hands, the project management team will look at that and say, this is a risk. They want to be able to go in possibly direction A or direction B down the road. They haven't made up their minds. Based on that, we're going to not choose this platform, or we're going to make, these, we're going to set up a taxonomy that's really broad so that they have the leeway later to go down A or go down B, and that you save their butt, because they wouldn't. It would be all done. The site would be up. The provider, the developer would be off in the sunset, and they would wake up one morning and say, okay, we're ready to go in direction B. We can't.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's more than that. I mean, you get into the weeds, and like, for example, you can build widgets, right, on a lot of these CMSs, right?
Yep.
And these widgets can do different things, but you now need to program those widgets to deliver those things. So most widgets allow you to modify image, text, font, whatever, right? Let's say you have a product, build a product card, and they have multiple variants on it. Do we give that widget the ability to modify variants? Do we give that widget to modify custom fields? Like, these are the types of things, right? And like, so that's where project management comes into play, and technical architecting comes into play to ask all the right questions.
Yeah.
What is the outcome? So again, we initially started pulling it all the way back to user experience, right?
Yep.
You start distilling it down and saying, okay, well, if the brand wants to be able to modify certain things, well, that should play into the user experience flow.
Yep.
Right. So project management, going back to your question, like, project management's massive, right? Like, again, you're not going to run, you don't build a building without architectural plans. So you're not building a 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, even $1 million e-commerce site without understanding the architectural diagrams and understanding the overall objectives that you are trying to accomplish with this migration or the product, right?
Yeah.
It's understanding the why. And I talk about this all the time in my company. It's like, when we come down with something, management comes down with something, it's like, hey, we're going to do this, but here's why we're doing this, right? And it's the same conversation with the brand. They say, I want this thing. I'm like, why? What's the objective? It's honestly the simplest question you can ask them, and you'd be surprised how dumbfounded people get. It's like, what do you mean, why? I'm like, well, what's the objective? Like, what are you trying to accomplish with this? What's the outcome? Is it ROI? Is it revenue? Is it upsells? Is it personalization? Or do I want to capture data?
Yeah.
And understanding the why then translates to user experience, which ultimately then translates to project management, because everything distills down from there. And then having good software.
It ought to be,
all
right?
This stuff, right?
Yeah. But it's a way for the strategy to come to life.
Absolutely.
And everybody, we all can tell when we've seen it, where it's holistic with the brand, and we just feel like it's all clicking.
Yeah.
That's
that I've been
right behind the scenes. There were some really hard conversations, and that top to bottom, how does the strategy boil down to tactics, and how do tactics roll up to strategy? It was all done.
Usually a site launch will depend on how much upfront information you were able to gather during the solutioning and onboarding phase.
Right.
And, I've launched hundreds and hundreds of products over my career at this point. And I can tell you, the ones that went really, really well is because they had very good communication, very good project management, very good oversight. And there are other ones that didn't go so well.
Yeah. Yeah. So a real key to all of this is keeping up on the changes that are happening. You yourself, I know you might not toot your own horn here, but you at Arctic Leaf should be commended for having a regular series of not only blogs, but even webinar events that just freely share this kind of new stuff. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, we have I think we're planning our third ONTAP series for GA4, right? So
here.
So we've had some really great feedback. GA4 obviously has come to light. It's most of the sites are now running on GA4. If you haven't set it up, you should. But Glenn, myself, and one of my colleagues has put together a series of episodes talking about the do's and don'ts, some of the terminologies, the things that have changed. And again, it's value add, right? Like, our objective is to share information about what's happening in the industry, because this industry is changing so fast. Like, I feel old, man. I feel really old in this industry. Like, I just turned 40, and I'm just like, I feel like a dinosaur in this space. Like, then you can go down the rabbit hole. Then you start talking about AI and ChatGPT, and then you have it just doesn't end. And it's like, how do you keep up with all of that? So Yeah, at Arctic Leaf, we saw an opportunity to really share some amazing data. I know, Glenn, you've been in the weeds on GA4 for a while now, so I thought it was a great opportunity to bring you on the show, talk about it. We generally have one a month. So
Yeah.
last month we just talked
And
about
yeah, on a
referral marketing.
multiplicity of topics. Yeah.
Yeah, and next month we're going to do our GA4 part 3, and
Yeah.
then we're actually going to do mini on tap series where we're going to talk more about branding, and we're going to talk about a little more user experience in the weeds with my creative director, CSM. What does Jason do on a regular basis? Kind of getting in the weeds of what's happening. But we try to bring all different types of guests and all different types of partners. Sometimes we have merchants on the calls with
Yeah.
some of our partners. So we try to run the gamut, and we try to create an environment that's fun and interesting. The whole idea of on tap is you have a beverage and well, salute at the end and all that kind of stuff. So it's sometimes it's high level, sometimes it's we had another one recently. We talked about first party, second party, and third party data, which was I think something I didn't even know a tenth about it till after till after I got out of that. I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, okay, I need to sit down now and just process everything because that was a lot. So
It's an ocean, right? There's way too
oh
much for any one person, but that is the right spirit to approach it in. Is we know some stuff, other people know some stuff. Let's pool it together.
yeah, and it's distilling it down. You got to find the right people who are going to talk about the things that are interested. I mean, heck, doing what I do, Glenn, like I see industries that I never even thought were a thing. Like it's just wild. The stuff that people sell online, it, there's everything you want. It's just nuts, and it's never ending. And depending on the market or industry you're in, you're going to have a little bit of a secret sauce, a little bit of a different flavor. Like some things are going to work in certain industries, some things are not because they're considered higher risk, right? So, for example, SMS for the longest time, we couldn't leverage SMS in the cannabis or CBD space for a very long
Right.
time because there was
Right.
too many compliance issues. So now you have an entire segment that is completely cut off to this channel that is driving massive amounts of revenue and ROI for all these other segments and markets over here.
Right.
And so it's our job as Arctic Leaf, I feel, to be able to convey our learnings and understanding and bring people like you on the call and onto on tap to share your knowledge, and hopefully it all comes back in the long run. But there's a lot of data to share, a lot of information to share. We're only giving a little bits here and there as much as we possibly can. But yeah, it's takes some work to do it too. It's a lot to put together.
For sure. The trick of kind of, as you say, making stuff that's got common value across most. But I think what it leaves people with is the idea that there's more than that available. If people are interested in seeing if their particular industry subsector and geography can be using some of the new tech, if they get the general gist from things like the resources you put out, that this in general works, but your mileage may vary, then they'll come and talk to you. And on that note, Josh, how do people get in touch with you?
Oh man, so lots of ways. You can Google my name, Josh Garellek, or go to joshgarellek.com. I have a personal website talking about some of my experiences and things that I'm passionate about. Obviously, arcticleaf.io is my digital agency. We've been around 13 years, working with mid-market to enterprise e-commerce brands. I got a software as a service company called partnerportal.io. So it's all around partner management and partner relationships. So honestly, guys, LinkedIn, I'm all over that. You can connect with me on my website personally. Happy to connect. I am on Instagram, josh.garellek. So pretty much everywhere. If you Google
Wow.
my name,
Yeah.
you should be able to find me. And if you don't, then so help me God, you probably shouldn't contact me.
That's right. If you're using 2 soup cans and a string for your internet, you've got bigger problems.
My only request is if you guys do reach out to me, just don't try to sell me something on the first message, please.
Yeah.
Like I will just not respond. It's just not how I play ball.
Yep.
LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. I'm on there constantly. I post. try to get to know me, actually bring in some take a look at my profile, see what I'm interested in. But if you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out. Our agency is here to help, here to support. And if we can't do that, and if we're not necessarily the right fit, we do have other partners and other people that we can refer you to that are trusted, that we know that are going to do amazing quality work. Right. So, yeah, you can't find me, then there's a problem.
Thanks so much for coming on, Josh.
Oh, thanks for having me, Glenn.
Yeah, and I know that people have left here with getting something that helps them make their funnel even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.